Let me know when we're good. Check the stream.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea.
Didn't pick it one time. But the other time since.
Let's see. It's private.
YouTube doesn't work. We got backup.
Well, you could do that anyway.
Or did they come up and it stopped?
Yeah, I don't know why.
There it is. Oh, no. Okay. Well, now I'd like to call the October 19th, 2023 Town of Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's forget that.
Okay, Jasmine, would you please conduct the roll call?
Chair Sam Zarowski,
Present.
member Charlie Fisher, member Ken Stevens,
Good.
member Clayton Howden,
Here.
member Harley Davis.
Okay, great. So we've got two things on our agenda tonight. The first is the continued application for Quinamone. We held a public hearing 2 meetings ago, or I guess actually it was at the last meeting, and we closed that public hearing. There was just a small, we had a quorum, but we were short 2 members. So the board and the applicant all agreed that we could just wait until the full board was here to talk about making a decision on this one, which I'd like to do today. So that's where we're at. For a refresher, this was the Quinamones have a parcel in R2. It's like it's a little, I think it's a little smaller than the 2 acres with an existing home. They're wanting to add a garage, and the location of the garage that they identified interferes with the 40-foot side yard setback. So we've worked with them to explore different options, and we all felt like we had all the information we needed. We had no comments from the public. So if you guys are all good with it, I think we should go ahead and work on making a decision on this. So I did not write anything in advance. Maybe if I had more time today, I would have. But what we've done for the last couple of decisions, which I think has been great, is just kind of going through the 5 different questions that were required by law to consider. I like the conversations we have when we go through these things, so go through them and then make a determination based on the conversation we have. So does everyone kind of have the application fresh enough in their mind, or? Okay. So the first question that we need to look at is whether or not there will be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties that will be created by the granting of an area variance in this case. Clayton, you got any thoughts on that?
I would say no. And if anything, it wouldn't matter because of where that's going to border is along that pond. So I don't see any negative effect. It doesn't make the pond fall. It's bordering water.
Charlie?
I say no.
Ken?
Nope.
Okay, well then we all agree. So I think maybe for the finding here, maybe we can say, you know, that it's not like in a dense neighborhood where it's going to be putting a garage close by and there's water right there on the other side of that property line. So there's no potential for someone to have a home there that it would be close to. I think the other thing for me is it's a typical thing to have a garage with a home. So we're not, they're not putting in any sort of unusual structure that messes with the setback. Okay, so for okay, so I just said the board finds that there will be no negative impact as the location of the proposed garage is adjacent to a water body on the neighboring property, and garage structures are typical in residential zone.
Did you put location there or garage and location? What was location?
The proposed as the location, I said as the location of the proposed garage.
That's good.
So then the second question is whether whether the proposed, sorry, my computer's being slow for a second. Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. So basically, could they do something else and get the same benefit? We ended with Harley, so you want to start?
I'm sorry.
Oh, whether the,
Sorry,
we can start with Ken, but it's the question is whether the benefit can be, whether the applicant can get the benefit by another means that wouldn't require variance.
I don't think they can. They've done everything they could to shorten it up. And make it so it's the least amount possible. I don't see where after going over everything where they'd be able to put it, that would make sense.
Ken?
Is it still a 24 by 24 garage?
That's what they're still asking for. They didn't modify their request.
But once they actually measured, it showed that they needed a little less than what they were originally.
Right, the actual variance is smaller.
Yes.
Than what the original asked, but the dimensions.
Are still the same.
The only thing I would say is, just could they put a garage that met their needs without the area variance that could be smaller, but it would still require a variance as far as I know. So I think the answer is no, because of that. Right? Because they described, if I recall, a specific need that they had for the size of the garage, and making it much shorter would have defeated the whole purpose. I think that's what the question raises. Can their goals be met?
Yeah, whether the benefits sought by them.
So I'm comfortable with saying no.
Mhm.
There's no.
I would say no, there's no other real means to do anything else but the variance.
Peyton?
That's no, because just shy of them not building the garage, there is all stands. The need that variance saw.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the only thing I'd add is that we did look at, like we had them look at multiple options. And also the property was constrained by like, I don't know what the right word is, waterlogged soil, the location of septic, drainage infrastructure.
The ditch in the back.
Yeah,
And it is, for the record, very small. It's only about an acre.
yeah, right.
So
Where the home is located, it doesn't allow for anywhere comfortably around the home.
Right.
To fit.
I
Okay,
think we had them plot
We
everything.
did. We sent them to the well 3 times to get information.
Even if they moved it farther back, then they get into that drainage. Gets into there's, and I mean, they
That
can,
whole back right
yeah,
or back left is we're looking at. It's
Yeah.
all-
and it's not even like they asked to put it closer to the road, which would be even more of a variance.
Because the property is.
I'll tell you. It's not all 5 feet. 50 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very bad.
What that is. So what are you using that to measure properties? So it's farmland? I've gone to that and been like, this is wrong.
I found these looking on my road where they actually have the home on the longest property. That's the way they have it divided. It's that far along.
Yeah. About that and measuring the garage. Change the garage. A couple hunting house. That-
Record.
Yeah, those things are like spot on. It's like a couple of- I found markers. I guess.
Okay, so I wrote, no, the applicant explored various options that could potentially satisfy their objective of having covered vehicle and equipment storage. Because the property is constrained both by its size and by septic and water drainage infrastructure. No other. Patients. Additionally, the proposed size of the garage is necessary in order to safely store their vehicles and to enter and exit the garage. That sound good to everybody? Might fix some commas later, but that would be just grammar. Okay, so we're saying no on that. The third question, whether the requested area variance is substantial. So they're asking in their most recent updated ask, which I believe is the September 19th email. No, it's not.
That's before the meeting.
It was. What was their last letter?
That was our letter.
What was the last letter from them?
Is that the one that's talking about clarification?
No, that was the first thing we got.
Is it, let's see.
It's not spoken by me.
It's not the clear. You know which one it is, Jasmine? Is it this one? That's September 19th?
That's what I think it is.
The last thing we got from them was the width of the drive.
Oh, this one.
Determined to be 10 feet, right?
Oh, but the one where they like responded to the.
So it's taking them 42, so I have over.
There's another.
Driveway width is the last one before that was the email correspondence from the public hearing.
Number 22nd.
Yeah, I have one from 8/18.
And that's an email from them.
Yeah,
They might want to print that out.
922 is the driveway.
yeah, so they're saying the last thing they said, measured and placed the post.
Yeah, we discussed that at the last meeting.
Yeah, if we had a 40-foot setback, there's only 9 feet, we could 7 feet for a turnaround of 16 feet. We prefer to have a 20 feet safety, so they're asking for between, so that the setback in the code is 40 feet. And they're asking to be 33 feet is the furthest that they're saying would work. But what they would prefer is to be 28 feet from the property line. So they're saying like that's the range that they feel is workable. That's what they're asking for is 12, and they're saying that if they feel like they could make it work, but not to their preference. if they were, set only a 7-foot variance.
10 foot, I'm looking for a 10 foot.
Which one is that?
So it's the bottom of the email correspondence. Says we still need a variance, but instead of 12 foot, we could get by with 7 foot. We would much prefer 10 foot variance for safety, turn ins and turnarounds.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's the same thing I was looking at.
It's the last very,
All right, so look for 25%.
Oh, okay, so 10 instead of, right, 10, 7 to 10 feet. Instead of.
if I was 7, they prefer.
Okay. So yeah, 25% percentage, or maybe a little bit less. Okay, so, well, Clayton, why don't you start? Whether you think it's substantial.
Yes, it's still considered substantial due to the distance and the percentage that they're seeking. But given the fact that we've already kind of covered a lot of that in question 1, I don't see it as an issue, but it is substantial.
Charlie?
If you're only at 25%, I don't see that being substantial. 50% is considered substantial. 25, I don't think it is.
10?
I agree with Clayton that it's substantial. It's almost, it's substantial, yes.
Right, like substantial, but like, also, yeah.
For this particular question, Charlie, some of the cases say, 5 or 10,
It
10 or
depends.
15%, but I agree with you. It can be very, because it's 15% in one case is substantial, doesn't mean every case, but for this, I say it's substantial.
I think for me, it comes down to the total allowed area. So if it were 1,200 feet and they were asking for 300, that's still 25%.
Yeah.
Then it would be considered substantial because it's 300 feet. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Harley?
In this circumstance, I agree with Charlie, it's not really substantial.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be King Solomon here. I mean, I think I kind of agree with what everyone's saying. Like, even it sounds like Clayton and Ken are both saying like, call it substantial, but like, we also kind of feel like it's not a big deal, but like, they're asking specifically if it's substantial.
For this particular thing, it's
It's not binding, just because we
Yeah,
say it's
yeah,
substantial doesn't mean you can't measure there.
Easy for you. I can easily say no also. You know what I mean? That's the thing about this.
Well, are you comfortable? Are you both comfortable saying no?
It's this question in this instance is more of a semantic than
I think-
necessary.
Clayton, I think you had it right the first time. Because really, no, honestly, just in case it does come up again, because like if you do an offense and if you want to go from 4 to 6, that's what? Is that, that's 50?
Be 63.3%.
Yeah, however, percentages are weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I
I mean,
think
there's no, it sounds like there's no harm in anyone's mind in us calling it substantial.
no.
And we can say like, we do think this is substantial, but we also think it's kind of mitigated by the location.
it's up to you, Sam, but if you, or you could just say, the majority of the board feels it's not substantial, and the person who thought it was substantial did not, thought that the substantiality.
You want me to change the yes?
That's really mitigated. So,
This half the board doesn't.
Yeah.
And I mean.
I think the other, that's the reason I like saying, I guess the reason I lean a little towards yes on this question is sort of the point that Ken's making, like, in the future, if we have something coming up and we're like, oh, well, it's only 2 feet, but if it's a 10-foot setback, 2 feet, might feel like it's a big deal, and then we're at 20%, and then we're saying, oh, it's not substantial because like, I think it's a way for us to say, like, yeah, this isn't a small ask. We're not asking for 1 foot. They're asking for 10 feet, which is, so I guess that's where I come down, that, we're not, just because we say yes doesn't mean we can't grant the variance.
and just one last thing, sir, and I would say, and acknowledge that they reduced their request
Right,
after discussions with.
to make it less
Percentage
substantial.
wise.
It's still substantial, but we made it.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that, Charlie?
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna say it is substantial. So I'm gonna say the applicant is asking for a 10-foot variance from a setback. 25%. Board feels that this percentage is substantial. Situation.
Right, I took her yesterday, I'm like,
Or
why are we not meeting with my feet? She's like, oh, that's right. I will call. It's 50%, right? I don't even know what that is.
Pleasure. Yep. Cheer.
Okay, so I'm saying, finding the applicant is asking for a 10-foot variance from a 40-foot setback, which is 25%. The board feels that this percentage is substantial in this situation. The board also recognizes that the applicant reduced the size of their initial request in order to make it less. Okay, number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I guess I'll start with this one. I think no. I think adding a garage in a residential area, it's still a reasonable distance from, it's still going to be 30 feet from the property line. Like, I don't feel like there's going to be any environmental effects, physical effects that are adverse. It's just adding. If anything, it might help because people don't like looking at parked cars sitting outside. So that's how I feel. Charlie?
Agree with you.
Okay.
I would agree also, because, and simply
Look at my
because
neighbors.
none of the neighbors that attended the public hearing came up
Yeah,
with
no
any
one had it.
opposition, so.
Sure.
I agree.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say, board finds that the addition of a garage, that is 30 feet. Have an adverse impact on physical conditions on this. Then with the variance, there is still a significant, I don't want to say substantial setback. There's still an adequate buffer from the property lines.
That's calling that the thesaurus.
Okay, so. Great, so I said, the board finds, I wrote the barn, or not the barn. The board finds that the addition of a garage that is 30 feet from the property line in a residential area will not have an adverse impact on physical or environmental conditions because this type of structure is typical in the zoning, and because even with a variance, there's still an adequate buffer from neighboring properties. Okay, 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the board, but shall not necessarily include the granting of the area variance. Harley? Self-created?
I mean, it is self-created. I think garage is very.
But like, I think the question is like, did they create for themselves a problem that they then had? So like if you put your house,
Yeah.
They didn't build a garage yet.
Yeah,
That's
Or like if you do a whole bunch of landscaping with stone work and patios, and then you're like, oh shoot, I put my patio where the garage needs to be, and now I need.
Then no, it's not.
Because it's always like, anytime anyone wants to do anything, they're like making that.
I mean, it's not like they've, you know, they're like, hey, we got all this room over here, let's put the well over here. They didn't. decide
Right,
that.
yeah.
So. My answer.
I think it's yes, or for the region that, how they originally cited, I think that's actually more closer to what the law is, but that's just my opinion, and it doesn't mean that, you know, I think 90% of the things that come to you are self-created, because I think that what the question gets at is, was there some external change or force that actually was beyond the control of the applicant, in which case it would not be self-created. But almost everything else is self-created, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the statute specifically says it's not determined. So that's why I'm comfortable saying, yes, it is. Doesn't mean that I'm going to deny the application.
Charlie?
Yeah, it's self-created, but also the town created it by changing the codes.
Right.
Because it was a 1 acre zoning when that house was built, then they changed it to.
Oh, I didn't understand that.
And the setback, that changed. Yeah.
And the setback, oh, that, thank you for that, because I would change then if that's material, then yeah, it's a difference.
But we don't have it in our evidence.
Right, it's not part of something. you
We don't
consider
have
because
that in
that's
our,
bad.
I guess we could just know what,
Comprehensive plan now
as
says
residents of the
this.
town. What do you think, Peyton?
I still think it's yes, and even though the comprehensive plan long ago specified a 1 acre parcel, this is still created by them within that zoning area.
Right.
So it's still a yes, although it's not a determining factor necessarily in the outcome of how we decide. It's self-created. They sought to do this and created the problem. If they hadn't sought this, it wouldn't be an issue.
Like, so what would be like, maybe from your perspective, Ken, what would be a not self-created? Like you said, if something extra, like, would that be like if the zoning changed
Exactly.
while they'd already owned the property?
Exactly.
Or they were like in the process, they started planning their garage, they were like, it's gonna go here, and then the zoning change, then it would be like, no, they didn't self-create it. They were.
I mean, with this particular property, if the water broke and started flooding, and now they had to push back, I mean, it's, you
That
know,
might be another example.
there's,
Yeah, that you can imagine. a
Yeah.
situation like that.
all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we need a variance, we can put the garage over here, because now this area is being flooded by changing.
Yeah, because like the way that I guess I was thinking not self-created, and the reason that I was thinking that is like, well, they don't have any other place.
Yeah, no,
And the desire to have a garage, I feel like is just a normal, like they're not like creating some weird need, like I need to build a recording studio.
interesting question.
They're like, we just need a garage, and there's like literally nowhere else. So in that way, I see it as not self-created. It's just like, well, there's nowhere to put it, and I didn't make this property, and I didn't build the house here. I bought an existing house. But again, it doesn't have to be binding.
We've got an instance where if you're gonna look at other potential arguments for why it wouldn't be, you have to consider every time we've said, yes, it is self-created. It would happen. You can't, once you say something isn't, then it's hard to say it's not next time. Every instance we get in, the last time we had a fence issue, 6 foot, that was still self-created because they sought that variance to meet that 6 foot need. It's still going to be a yes. It's going to be few and far between where you have that opportunity to say, no, it's self-created, if that makes sense. I don't know how to give you an example of why it would be a no.
I guess like maybe a thing is like if they didn't have, like they have like a camper van, right? And like, I guess it's like if they had like a little tiny Nissan, and they were like, oh no, our garage could be 15 feet.
They could have went long lines.
Right, or something, and it didn't have to be 24, like, I mean, I'm comfortable saying yes, I was thinking about it a little differently.
Yeah, just quickly, if you read I think somebody had circulated the Department of State's synopsis of the role of the zoning board of appeals. I just remember, because I was struck when I read it, that it did say that the overwhelming majority of cases that come before zoning board of appeals are self-created. It used to be a big deal before they changed the law. I mean, you could get sunk on that question. That's why now it specifically says that this need not be determined, because back before they changed the law, it was often seen as.
It's already, you had, the applicant had one strike against them when it came to question.
Yeah, a very serious strike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just checking that out since we mentioned that. Anyway, okay. What are they saying?
The house.
The hell, move the rest so we're good to go.
It's not self-created.
Yeah, I mean, they give a bunch of examples.
It was not self-created.
Wasn't that mid box fence?
That's what I thought.
Because the road and the way that the house is built right on the road, it wasn't self-created.
Right, it was-
I want to say it was that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That was self-created, because he could have put a 4-foot fence.
Right.
You
Yeah,
needed a variance either way.
yeah,
And it
he
wouldn't need a fence.
needed a variance regardless. It
Without
mattered if it was a
the road.
1-foot fence. It's a
Because
house.
it was inside the road,
Yeah.
inside the setback.
Yep.
I want to say
that's
that's
what it
on
was.
the road. Yeah, that's why.
Am I overstating it, Sam?
No, I think, self-created difficulty is not the same as self-created hardship, even if precedent constitutes only one factor. I mean, it's like, I don't know, they're giving you, one court shed light on possible scenarios constituting self-created difficulty by saying where the lot was substandard and non-conforming at the time it was purchased, or where construction occurred due to contractor error, or without the benefit of a building permit, or where an applicant seeks to construct 3 homes. So like, this is a case where it's a non-conforming lot when they bought it. So I guess that is self-created because they could have not bought the lot. Right, it's like, it's kind of like we were saying, everything is kind of self.
Don't build a garage,
Yeah.
don't put up the fence.
Right.
Okay, so we're gonna say yes, if everyone's comfortable with that, I think I'm huge property. We're saying like, you know, the applicant is choosing to build a garage on a lot that when purchased did not meet lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily address it as one purchase because we don't know how long they've owned the home based on when the zoning changed.
Well, we know they just bought it.
Okay.
The applicant is choosing to build a garage on a lot that does not have a suitable location that meets setback requirements. They could choose not to build a garage.
They have, in fact, they have an existing
Right,
system.
not to build a garage and make do the existing conditions. Right, but like they could just not, like, no, I'm good. Right. Okay, so I'm just saying, yes, it is, the applicant is choosing to build a garage on a lot that does not have a suitable location that meets setback requirements. They could choose not to build a garage and make do with the existing. Okay. So then what do we want to do? So they're asking us to give them a 10-foot area variance. I think the initial ask was like 16 feet. So with,
Real quick, I'm sorry, on number 5, you
Yeah.
put in there the dimensions of the size garage, 24 by 24.
yeah, suitable, to build a 24 by 24 foot. Sure. 4-foot garage on a lot that does not have a suitable location. Okay. So yeah, then our determination. So again, I think originally were asking for like a 16-foot with some, really just some remeasuring. We were able to figure out that it didn't need to be 16 feet, it only needs to be 10. You know, they're saying one thing that I was struck by, maybe just in framing, is like the biggest need that they have for that specific location is having enough turnaround space to get in and out. I see that as a valid concern, but also that's like a bit subjective. It's like how much space you really need. And what they're asking for is from the edge of their existing driveway, they want to have, where's the button? From the edge of their existing driveway, they wanted to have. Yeah, it's in that.
It was in there. For
The
the
turnaround. Email correspondence. The bottom. Yeah. Right, so they want, so they're saying they want a minimum of 16 feet, but they prefer 20. So that's the difference between the, I guess, the 10 and the 7, even though those numbers don't totally line up. But there is also the existing driveway, which they're not counting as part of that. So I think that's the context. They're saying they want 20 feet between the edge of the driveway and the edge of the garage. And there's also a 10-foot driveway.
Yeah, on the other side of the driveway, so.
Most cars,
Yeah, there was a bunch.
normal sized cars, 20 feet long.
Yeah. Mhm. Right, so that's what they're asking for. They basically want to be able to pull a car in front of the driveway, in front of the garage, without having to pull it in so that they can, not counting the driveway space as part of that. So that they're not blocking.
Mentions for UPS, FedEx.
Right.
They would get in and out safer.
So that's their ask, and it's up to us whether we want to give what they're asking or less and why. So, I mean, I'm happy to start, but I like being the synthesizer. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd say we grant them the variance.
For the 10 feet.
I think they met everything we've asked, and obviously they're under constraint. That'll help their property. Increase value. Oh, yes.
Clayton?
I agree with that 100%. Yes, yeah, I think if anything, it's gonna increase the value of the home, property, neighborhood. See no adverse effect of granting this, doesn't impede anybody's view, no negative impact on the environment. Grant the variance.
Well, just so we all know, we're not supposed to think about money at all, just the land use, just so that we're not making it sound, I know no one's saying that's the reason why it's okay, but.
No,
What I'm saying is
We're not
based on the environment in the area.
Charlie?
I think it's a yes, the variance for 10 foot.
Ken?
I have no problem granting the variance. My only question is, since they said they could settle for 7, and I think we're supposed to
Do the minimum.
do the minimum. But perhaps it's immaterial in the grand scheme of things, the difference between 7 feet and 10 feet in this context. Some contexts that might be very material, but overall here, it may be immaterial. But that's the one little hitch here. But I hate to hold it against them. It was just kind of their attempt to say, you know, if they were here and we could have had a discussion, what's the difference? But I just kind of think that was their trying to be willing participants in a dialogue. I hate to hold it against them, but that was the one concern that I had.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had the same little hang up as Ken, like, part of me was like, well, I wish they wouldn't have said that thing, because are required to do the minimum. We're supposed to do the minimum necessary. You know, the one thing that we were talking about now, Harley mentioned, and also Charlie, was just like a normal car is 20 feet. And like, I mean, to some extent, I don't want to be in a position of telling the applicant that they're wrong, that they could get away with having less space there. But I also am like, well, what you're saying is you want to be able to not be blocking your driveway and to be able to turn around. And if a normal car's 20 feet, that's if you've got it pulled all the way up to the, you know, bumpers hitting the garage, and like most people leave 4 feet or more. You know, it's like, it does seem to me that a skilled driver can certainly turn around in a much smaller space than what they're asking for. But it's true, like when you've got a UPS truck or you've got a camper van or something and you're,
Snow.
even with snow,
If they could plow it, they could plow it up to it, they could, you know,
yeah.
stuff like that.
I do think we need to address that in some way, like if they're saying, and they did say, like, we feel like we could squeak by with 7, but we're kind of okay with 10, which I am.
They think based on that, it's important that even though they're not here, we kind of have, and I don't want to say act on the applicant's behalf, but kind of advocate for them in this instance, even though they're not here, just,
Well, they're being very clear that
What
they
they need.
prefer the 20 feet.
yeah, that's what I mean.
And I think like what Ken said, they're like trying to be like, hey, we're not
Yeah.
totally inflexible here. But right, it's like, but then I think we're in a situation too, where like maybe in the future, someone's like, look, I could probably get away with a little bit less, but like it would be much better for me if I had the full thing, and maybe that next time we're like, we kind of don't agree
Right.
as much. And I think that's why it's important that we address it with specificity. Like, you know, with the applicant doesn't work, here's a garage, they're asking for the ability to have safe turnarounds, not just for themselves, but for like a delivery vehicle. And we really actually think that even though they're saying they could get away with 7, we actually don't think that that adequately meets
On a safety issue.
the need that they have. And if they just, you know, we could say something, I think, well, not as long as we're grounding it in.
These tables are 6 foot.
This is an 8 foot.
Okay, they're 8 foot, so you're gonna have down to 7 foot there? No, no,
Well,
no,
7 foot
no.
variance, so they would still have,
16.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd have,
they'd have
17 feet.
they'd have 17 feet from the edge of their driveway to the garage. So it's like 2 of these tables. It's not that much.
I think there is, like you said, Sam, was more along the lines of, I'm willing to, you know, be part of this so that I can make this happen. But
Right.
really what we're asking for is 10 feet.
How about that? I have a suggestion. That we grant the application for 10-foot variance. Recognizing that although the applicant indicated they could accept a 7-foot variance, in this particular context, the difference is not very material, and they have demonstrated the
willingness.
the desirability and the appropriateness of the full 10-foot variance that they requested. So they've requested a 10-foot variance.
They ultimately requested. That's where they wanted to sit.
And we can grant that.
Yeah.
Step back, okay. So I'm gonna say it's hereby determined by the town of Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals, the request for an area variance is granted. The applicant has requested a variance of 10 feet from the 40-yard setback required against zoning. So that they can construct a 24-foot by 24-foot garage, which will be 30 feet from the side yard, from the side property line, and 20 feet from the edge of their existing driveway. This request will allow for adequate vehicle and equipment storage, as well as safe ingress and egress and turnaround space. Ingress, egress, and turn around space in front of the garage. Okay, and then Ken, what was can you re-say the thing you said that we all agreed with?
Can you read back what you have so far? And then-
Okay, so the applicant has requested a variance of 10 feet from the 40-yard setback required in the zoning so that they can construct a 24-foot by 24-foot garage, which will be 30 feet from the side property line and 20 feet from the edge of their existing driveway. This request will allow for adequate vehicle and equipment storage, as well as safe ingress, egress, and turnaround space in front of the garage.
So how about this? Although the applicant has indicated that if necessary, they could accept a variance of 7 feet. In this particular instance, limiting the variance to 7 feet would not fully achieve the objective sought and might actually compromise safety in terms of egress and turnaround.
No, that's it.
Okay, so the board also recognizes that although the applicant has indicated that they could accept a variance of 7 feet rather than 10 feet, in this instance, the board finds that a 7-foot variance would not adequately meet the need expressed or the need presented by the applicant. And could even present challenges in terms of safe ingress, egress, and turnaround, especially in the winter or with the vehicles.
Should we also put in there that change would have had no impact on the
Oh, right.
decision-making process?
Yeah.
Question
Mhm.
1
Put that in front of that. The board recommends that they could accept the variance. This instance. Additionally or further, the board finds that the difference between 7 feet and 10 feet will not material.
How about, can I just make one quick?
Yeah.
The difference between a setback of 30 feet or 27 feet
Yeah.
is not material,
Okay.
because that's better than saying the
absolutely.
difference between 7 and 10 is not.
Looking at 7, the number 7 versus 3, which sounds a lot like that. I like that.
Okay, so that the difference between a setback of 30 feet and one of 27 feet does not have a material impact
In this setting.
does not have a material effect on the impact of the variance in this situation. It also does not impact or affect the board, how the board answers the 5 questions. But, yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Should I just read all that before we do a motion? Okay, it is hereby determined by the town of Rochester, New Field, that the request for an area variance is granted. The applicant has requested a variance of 10 feet from the 40-yard setback required in the zoning so that they can construct a 24-foot by 24-foot garage, which will be 30 feet from the side property line and approximately 20 feet from the edge of their existing driveway. This request will allow for adequate vehicle and equipment storage, as well as safe ingress and egress and turnaround space in front of the garage. The board also recognizes that although the applicant has indicated that they would accept a variance of 7 feet rather than 10 feet, in this instance, the board finds that a 7-foot variance would not adequately meet the need presented by the applicant and could even present challenges in terms of safe ingress, egress, and turnaround, especially in the winter and with delivery vehicles. Further, the board finds that the difference between a setback of 30 feet and one of 27 feet does not have a material effect on the impact of the variance in this situation, It also does not affect how the board answers the 5 questions above. I'm fine.
Yep.
Anything else that we need in there? Everyone comfortable with that?
Just when you said it,
Okay, great. Well, so then I move that we approve or that we adopt this decision as read and presented and written by us all together right now. Yeah,
I'll second it, but was there something where we have to approve the secret?
we already did that.
We did
Yeah,
that.
we
Okay,
did
we
that.
did that.
Yep.
I second the motion.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. Anyone opposed? And any abstentions? No. Okay, so that carries, this variance is granted. Jasmine, I'll ask you to fill in all the nitty gritty stuff on the top. And then I'll come in on Monday to sign
We
it.
have training on Monday. Everything's closed.
Oh, well, how many days do we have to sign it? There's like a limit. Well, if you get it ready and you message me, maybe you can like leave it out somewhere and I can sign it. We'll text with each other.
We have sexual harassment training on Monday
Nice. All day, huh?
and insurance and all that good
Okay.
stuff, so.
All right, well, we'll go back and forth. and get it signed. Okay, great. So that's that. So we can move on to our next thing, which you're probably Mr.
Wait.
Hershkowitz. Yeah.
Take
You can
a
come on.
monetary value of a property into consideration.
Because they don't want it to sway it out.
Not to sway, but I mean, if there's gonna be, if you're gonna have some negative impact on. Yep. That would, the property in the neighborhood, like the food buildings up on. No, if you were to put one of those
Or
somewhere
put this
on
in,
your property, it just it wouldn't look right. And then you. One of the questions when the
Yeah,
person
fine.
goes in the shed. What kind of shed's it gonna be? 3 stories?
Yeah.
You know, I don't, neighbors gonna like that.
what's that?
This is my third decision.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is too hard is just that's what the courts have said, like, we can't be like, oh,
Can't apply
this is
financially.
gonna, we think this is gonna be a good investment for you, so
Yeah.
we're okay with it. Or whatever. I'm not supposed to do that.
Makes sense. It's the way it addresses the environment and neighborhoods.
Yeah. so it's
Outside
land,
of
it's supposed to
financial
just be land
value.
use. It's- Okay, so we have a new application, it's,
Get some,
Yeah.
so this is a new area variance application, it's at 14 and 15 Bakertown Road. You're Henry Hershkowitz?
Yes.
Great, well, welcome. We've got what you've submitted to us so far. Do you just want to take a second and talk about what you want to do? And
Yeah, sure. I
Why?
mean, it's all in the application, I'm trying to make it as clear as possible, but lived for a number of years at 14 Bakertown Road and bought 15 Bakertown Road in tax auction, like, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. There was a trailer up there. We got rid of the trailer and put a kind of a modern house up there. And put a garage for my house, which is 14. And we've been using it ever since. So it's there, it's existing. It doesn't have running water, it just has electricity and it's garage. It looks like my house. I live in a white farmhouse. It's new, but it looks like an old white farmhouse garage. It's directly across the street, both are right on the road. And we've been using the modern house as a property. It's been Airbnb. And keep the garage,
right, yeah.
which we use because our property is less than an acre from what we live on. But we have a 3-bedroom house, no garage, no basement. You just can't build, there's no space for a garage, setbacks, etc. And there's no, the property doesn't allow for, just what's there existing doesn't have a basement. So we use the garage across the street for parking and for storage. And there's no use for that garage for the modern house, which is a couple hundred yards up into the property. The issue that I gather is neither of the parcels are 2 acres. So I heard you talking about earlier, it used to be 1 acre. That's probably, my house itself is actually on less than an acre. acre. It's a very old house. And the property across the street is between 1.6 and 1.7 acres. So I want to cut off a quarter to a third of an acre to keep my garage with my house. We don't want to make any changes. We just want to keep the existing use. But because it's less than 2 acres, I think we applied first through
Yeah.
building department, and because it's less than 2 acres, it's come here. And I guess my thought is it makes my property that I want to stay at with the garage more conforming. So each property would be about 1.3 to 1.4 acres if you grant variance.
Okay, so thank you for that. That all makes sense to me. Just a couple quick questions. One is I just want to clarify. We have the application to the zoning board lets you apply either for an appeal, which would be like I disagree with what the code enforcement office said, or for I agree with what they said and I need a variance. And I'm asking for a variance. I
Okay.
think what you're asking for is a variance, not an appeal, but I just wanted to totally clarify since that box wasn't checked.
Oh,
then you
yes,
like
I think I'm
you
asking
reuse it.
for-
Okay. I just wanted
I've
to
never done this
clarify that.
before, but that
Sure.
makes sense.
Yeah, no problem. And I thought everything you wrote matched up with that. And it can be confusing if you've not been through it.
The
but-
forms are very confusing
Yeah.
because there's many pages of them that
Right,
aren't relevant.
So I just wanted to make sure that you're not trying to say code enforcement is wrong. It sounds like you understand. They're saying because they're both smaller than
Right,
2 acres.
correct. So we're just asking for.
Okay, and then the other thing I just wanted to make sure you understand is that you unfortunately got into like a little bit of a procedural chain of events where maybe it's not unfortunate, it's just how it is. But you went to code enforcement to start an application, which is what you always have to do. They said, well, you can't do this without a variance. So they sent you to us. And I just want to make sure that it's clear to you that even if we grant a variance, you still will then have to go to the planning board to actually have them approve the lot line change, which is
Okay.
like not a super big process with them. But, you know, we can say it's okay that it's non-conforming. And then they would have to say
It makes sense.
where they're putting the line meets setbacks.
Yeah, I didn't hire surveyors
Yeah.
yet for it. I just had, like, I think I gave it to my architect.
Yeah.
Because he built the garage and built our addition, like, put it all. to be
And you
very
did
clear.
that all with permits and everything, so we kind
Yes,
of know where it
everything's.
is. Yeah. Great. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. To you.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you're basically
I mean, I'll
saying-
probably call. Exactly what I need to do.
Yeah.
That was a little more thorough.
So basically what you're asking is for permission to make 2 non-conforming lots still both be non-conforming, but in a different way than they are currently. Yeah. Okay. I feel clear. So I'll just open up to the board to ask you any questions. Clayton, you got any questions?
Yeah, when you create the flag lot here, setback for the garage to where the edges on portion of this flag lot's gonna be, what's the distance here?
Oh, I do not know. I'd have to.
We're gonna have to have that, because it may not meet the proper setbacks code at that point.
To the driveway, you're saying? Or-
So where the property line is, from here to here.
Right. So currently the property line is here and we're cutting it here.
Yes.
Basically. Okay. Is there a certain distance that it needs to be from the
40.
driveway?
It's
I mean, I
supposed to be-
suppose I can also, when I sell, if you grant variance, if I sell the other property, I could keep the whole thing and allow them to have rights to drive over it.
Yeah, so I think
That would be a road.
what Clayton's getting at is that there's and code enforcement didn't flag this. But yeah, there's still gonna be a side yard setback from the new property line with the driveway. And if that's gonna end up being less than the 40 feet that's required, that would be like
Okay, I have a feeling it's
Part-
about 40 to 50 feet.
part
but I
B
can
of
go
the
measure it.
variance. That would just be like an additional thing in the variance, if that's where the line needs to be. And there's some stuff in the code that the driveway right of way needs to be a certain width and all that. So, and it's true, you could potentially not have the driveway as part of the deed for the house in the back.
Mhm,
And then
Although I
have
prefer
a,
to.
and then have like some sort of easement.
Right.
But I think this is probably a cleaner way to do it in terms of,
Now, there's another question in regards to where the entrance is to the driveway for that garage. It's gonna come off of that other parcel of property. It's no longer gonna be on your property. You
Right.
do divide this, so you're proposing to put a different entrance here for that driveway?
I'm not, I would just, when I sell the other property, I'd have a right of way of
Okay.
their driveway. So I would want to keep it existing the way it's been used for the last number of years.
yeah, so I think like either way, there's some shared use of that driveway on
Yeah.
Baker Town.
Divide it. You know what I mean? It's either you're gonna use their driveway to get to your garage, or they're gonna use
Your
yours
driveway to
their
get to the
house.
rest of their driveway.
And it might be the case with the setback that it'd be,
More advantageous for you to have the property to get to your garage.
Correct, so.
but then
it's-
there's a lot that doesn't have road access, which is
It's-
also a conformity
Driveway.
issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which then further,
It doesn't really have to have a driveway to have road access. Because the road here, this is his house, this is where the garage is, and this is where the other house is, right?
I mean, I suppose
That's
I could add a
getting
new driveway that's parallel to it. It would just require, you know, grading plan, et cetera.
but that's what I mean.
You know what I'm saying? Application.
Right, I'd rather avoid that.
Let's let, guys, let's just have one
I'd
person
rather.
as time talking, but Charlie, you were thinking about the layout there. I just wanted you to be able to talk so everyone can hear.
Oh, sorry. I was just, making sure this was, one house and this was the other house.
The dark house at the top is the modern house that I want to sell, but the garage is on that property, which is 1.6 or 1.7 acres.
He's proposing taking this section here off this lot. Put it down.
I was gonna take it right up there, but you can't.
Right, and that would create this flag lot. Where you would have the right of way going past and then widening to the back.
Yeah, so what's gonna happen is if there's other lot requirements other than just the area,
Mhm.
and what code enforcement flagged was just the area. But another requirement is that a lot has 50 feet of road frontage. So you've got that the way the architect did it for the home in the back. Which it might make total sense to do that, but then it's also gonna likely create a setback issue for the garage with the new property line. You know, that's something you can ask for a variance for on that too, but we just wanna like call that out.
Sure.
Because there might be, if you talk to your architect or a certain, you know, like whoever's you're working with on figuring out exactly how to do this, there might be other options, like there's different ways to think of how the shared driveway would work. I don't know if this is what Charlie was about to say, but it made me think like you could also maybe leave a flag on the other side that just doesn't have a driveway on. Right, so
I don't
like-
know what you mean by.
so the house in the back,
Done is this driveway right here becomes to the flag.
Okay.
Top,
so you could,
he's talking about putting access up this
so you
side.
don't even have to build a driveway. That would make the lot in the back meet the requirement, of having 50 feet of frontage.
Okay,
And it would probably get rid of your setback issues if there in fact are any. It's hard, it looks like it's close.
Measuring wise.
And then you would just need a driveway agreement.
Give the sign.
Yeah. And then you would,
Yeah,
and then you would need, just have it'd be like you would keep the driveway on the property that the garage is on. And you would give the house access to use that driveway. But then you would also draw the new property line so that the property had road frontage on the other side of the property than where the driveway is now.
I'm following him.
it would be this looking access point, so instead of this line continuing here, we continue here.
And the reason we're kind of focusing on that is like, we don't want to give you more variances than you need to.
Right.
It sounds a little weird. We can't tell you what to do, but it's just like, looking at this, it's like, it does seem like there would have to be a setback variance also. And if there's a way to do it where you wouldn't need a setback variance. If that makes sense, because go ahead.
Garage doors are headed towards the driveway.
The garage doors are right, are like parallel with the driveway. It's not in the front, it's not on Baker.
Yeah.
It's on the side.
Put another side. Where a little bit work.
Right, unless you have to go this way, not here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
think it potentially dangerous.
Yeah, two driveways so close.
Do I understand it though, that right now with this application, all we have to do is address the variance to have us,
The area.
to have the area variance. At that point, you go to the planning board for the lot line adjustment.
And then they could work all that out.
And,
The 40-foot part.
yeah, and very well may be that.
But then they might have to send you back.
So you might have to come back, but I don't understand, I don't think we could do it otherwise, right?
That's a question for our lawyer, which I did not ask her ahead of this meeting. Which I certainly can ask her. I think for me, I'm just thinking. It would be annoying for you if you got a variance for us for just the bulk lot size. And then went to the planning board and they were like, oh, well, now you need to go back there to get a setback. That would just
And
be
then
annoying.
go back again to the plane, right, and have bouncing this thing back.
That's
and
just
forth.
like,
I think we'd be
we can
wasting a
avoid
little
it.
bit of.
but I think maybe what always,
Yeah.
what Ken's saying.
You'd be looking at about 6, 8.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so I
Pretty
need to
much.
be 40 feet from the edge of the garage to
The property
edge,
line.
the property line. And the property line needs to be a certain distance away from the driveway.
No,
No.
Like, could the property line get pushed to the edge of the
yeah,
driveway?
you could maybe do a clever thing where the property line goes right to the edge of the driveway and then 10 feet from the road it balloons back out, so you have 50 feet of road frontage.
Yeah,
But that's something you would want to talk to your,
right,
Yeah,
we
that's
could
not-
have it
like, you
be
shouldn't
like,
really be advising.
No, that's-
but
No,
you
no,
just wanna-
I would advise you.
But the law in the town is,
no.
the lot that you built the new house on, that's 15 Bakertown?
Yes,
That 15 Bakertown needs to have 50 foot of road frontage to be a legal lot.
right.
But like
And
how
that's what the
deep that
architect,
50 feet is,
drew.
kind of, right, and then he just made the line go straight back. So there might be other options that would meet.
right, it could
50 foot.
potentially be 50, go to 40 and back
Right.
to 50 or something.
Mhm.
All right, well, I think it's all gonna hinge on me measuring how far it is to the driveway.
So I think we're trying to do the least work. And so I think what Sam was saying before, and perhaps others, was one way to approach this might be to divide the property in a different way. You go back to the architect and put the flag essentially on the other side of the lot. But, you know, that's gonna have an impact on the marketability of the property and other things that I'm not, gonna advise you on, but obviously other people will. So I'm trying to figure out whether or not there's any way for this gentleman to, if he wanted to present both variances at the same time.
It would be nice to see different options that might be available that would suit.
Yeah, and maybe the way to do it is to get, and I'm just talking out loud here, so I don't really know, is whether or not you can go back to code enforcement and say, can you address, in addition, the location of the garage?
Sure, he could ask code enforcement any
In the
questions he
referral.
wants.
And then if you get a negative declaration that is drawn, it doesn't meet the requirements, you and the people you consult with can decide whether or not
You
you want to ask for 2 variances or 1 variance. Are you following? Are
I
you-
think so.
You-
You're saying the second variance being the flag on the other side.
No.
No,
If the flag on the other side would probably obviate the need for a
separate
second variance,
Okay.
but you're gonna think about whether
You
or
might not
not
wanna
that's
do
what you.
I don't think I want to do it that way. I think I
Yeah.
would probably like to.
And
go
then
with-
the-
So the second variance is what?
Is the setback
The setback on
From
the
the-
driveway that we've been discussing.
Right, so
from
say
the property.
we'd like it to be
Property.
33 feet or whatever the actual
Right.
distance is.
And I think what Ken's saying is if you go back to code enforcement and say, look, Ken, it looks like, I think you probably, I guess this is also a question for our lawyer, like whether we can grant a variance. I guess he can just apply for the variance without having I think you're supposed to go through code enforcement.
Yeah.
I think
So you could just go back and be like, hey, will you look at this again? Because it looks also like I need, as presented, I would also need a setback variance. And then they can just like put that, they can amend the letter they sent to us.
Got it.
And then you could decide in consultation with whoever's advising you, whether you want to apply for that setback variance at the same time.
I think
that
that
you're
makes
asking.
sense.
Right, I think it sounds to me like.
Right, I mean, because we are making no change to
Yeah.
any use.
And my, I think on just the lot size variance, I mean, I'll just speak for myself, but I hear what you're saying about like, you're taking two non-conforming lots. You're not changing any use in any way. The land impact isn't changing. You're just redrawing the boundary so that one becomes a little more conforming and the other becomes a little less conforming. We've done that. The board has done that before. We've had very similar situations where we got two non-conforming lots and the boundaries get modified so that the boundaries suit the needs of the people who own those properties better. That's been something the board has done in the past without, I think, too much headache. But the setback thing would be nice for you to be able to, address it.
Right. Okay,
So measuring,
I'll measure it and then go to,
and whoever's advising you, like maybe they're gonna say, hey, you should actually get a surveyor or something like, I don't know what they'll say. But just like, so that you know.
that's the garage,
That's the garage.
and right across the street is the house.
So this is the garage.
Yes,
You already have a curb cut. You can actually bring a driveway in.
right here. I mean, I wouldn't, it's a path for
I'm
walking.
just saying.
Okay, well, if that's the case, but I don't have to use it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't think you need a,
No, I'm just saying, a lot of times you can't get through curb cuts when there's
Something already
when there's
there.
already a driveway there.
Right.
Yours have
Yeah,
one,
that's
which is-
essentially, it's a curb cut for walking,
Yeah.
basically. A car never is.
just if you wanted it. you could get it.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think what we're gonna say is like, we'll keep you on the agenda for the next meeting. I think we probably don't want to
Need some more
schedule a
answers.
hearing on this yet, only because of the setback question.
okay,
And then for you, and we'll send you a letter that just says these things.
okay,
I think we're looking for more information about the distance that Clayton first highlighted between the corner of the garage and the proposed property line.
And it's
I'll find out if that meets.
okay.
we're gonna need from the house
Mhm.
to this property line.
Which one?
the new property.
Oh, well, that's not in front of us, because that's existing.
Yeah, but it's being taken from this.
Yeah. You'd be adjusting the property lines.
No, but you're not changing, nothing about that setback changes. So if that's already been permitted and built, we're not.
We don't have to consider that.
No.
Okay.
So if at some point a variance was needed from code enforcement, it would have had already been given, but if you've got a certificate of occupancy and there's no citation, like no one's, I don't know if you did get a variance for that or not.
It was, there was a trailer where you see like the kind of parking area, and the house itself was an addition to the trailer that we just gutted and
And
rebuilt.
rebuilt. Yeah, so it was like a pre-existing
It was a
foundation. so you
pre-existing
didn't
property
get
that
it.
I bought the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it was all done with building permits and nobody said you need a variance,
It was,
then you don't.
okay,
I mean, no one said that you.
so it's just a question of this 40 feet. And if it's less than 40 feet,
For the
apply
garage.
for the second variant
After you go through proof.
after I go through code enforcement to change how many.
I mean, I
feet
guess,
want to do.
yeah, while we're talking about the setbacks, if you look at on the map you've got, there's a data table on the top left. And it
Yeah.
says setbacks, front, side, and rear.
Yeah,
I mean, while we're checking them, you should probably just make sure that rear one. That one's easier to move that line if you need to. But that rear setback also needs to be 40 feet.
Here to here.
got it, okay.
So it's just like double check all those.
Yeah, and again, that can be adjusted, it could be higher here and lower here. I mean, the architect, when he drew this, the surveyor said you could do anywhere from a quarter
Yeah.
to a third of an acre.
Sure.
The only person you'll upset is the surveyor.
Yeah, so I would just, I think that's the thing, is like, go back to whoever you're working with on this, say, the ZBA flagged that there might need to be an additional variance here. We want to find out if it's true. And we want to see if there's other options that are that you think are workable for you.
Yep.
And then represent either, to the code enforcement office. If you think if you're gonna be needing another variance, it's like, hey, and I'll confirm with our lawyer that that's the right process, and we can't just identify it ourselves. Because you don't have to, but we'll get back to you on that.
Okay. And so if that's the case, I would come back here the next time, ask 2 variances.
Yeah, you would amend your application
To be a
to
double
ask for
variance.
both. But you might find when you talk to, again, people you're working with, that there's another option, another way of drawing it
To avoid that.
to avoid that.
Okay,
Or maybe you don't need it anyway once you actually measure.
yeah, I'm gonna go measure with the flashlight when I get home.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and we'll put you, we'll send you a letter in the next couple days with these things that we said, just so you have
Okay,
it.
when is the next one? Just so I know to be around.
What, 11? What's our next
I got
Third-
2 meetings
third
in the
Tuesday.
same
Oh,
week.
it's a
Third, 4 weeks away, I think before Thanksgiving.
I got
Okay.
2 meetings in the same week. I don't know what they.
16.
16, okay.
And if you do come back, you'll need to have these measurements. Right,
Yeah, that's
in a
the-
document.
That's really the only
in
thing
advance of
we
the
need, yeah.
meeting,
Basically,
Take
put the
pictures when you
measurement
measure.
onto this drawing,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah, know what it is, and if you're changing what you're asking for, have the measurements
Redraw.
on that too.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And then we have like a submittal deadline that's a little bit ahead of the meeting, so that we have. a
2
chance to look
weeks,
at
I
it.
think.
Yeah.
that's
It'll
what
be
I
on
did
your post.
last time. Okay, so I have 2 weeks to do it.
Yeah, and if it's gonna be a little later, this isn't like a big
Change.
giant document, so we're willing to be flexible if there's
Okay.
good.
Usually I'm okay up until the Friday.
Okay.
The deadline week.
Okay, I think I'm capable of getting that.
Got any other questions for us?
No, thank you.
Do we have
Thank you
any-
guys for your time here. You guys get paid to do this?
Just a very small amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys, oh, good.
Why we do it?
I was gonna say, like, thank you for donating your time. God.
Well,
Um,
it pretty much
it's nominal.
Right.
It's enough to buy a,
$50.
I don't even know.
probably not even enough to buy.
No, I don't
I think it's $25 for the.
it's something like that.
You actually seem like you're having a good time.
I like it. None of us have any of this.
Not right now. I'm sure as you present the next.
Okay,
Okay.
So-
But
Yeah, there's
hopefully
gonna be
none
more
that I
questions.
can't answer.
That's correct.
Thanks so much.
Bakertown, I've lived up here in Carhunxon for many, many years before.
The Bakertown property.
The Bakertown property since 2000. I don't think of how old my kids are. 2008 or 9, probably. Part of the reason I'm selling, I have 18-year-old twins, so we're
Oh.
applying to college. That's why I want to sell this property across the street. At first, I thought they'll take it one day, but yeah. We're doing a store. I have 2 colleges.
Thanks.
All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Okay, so we have minutes and we also have other matters. Let's do other business. Well, you guys want to do minutes first or other business?
Whatever you want to do.
You gotta do it all.
Let's do
Whatever
minutes
you want
first.
to do.
That's what Jasmine wants to do is other.
Right.
So everyone get a chance to review the minutes from the August meeting.
Yes. I think we should say yes.
Anyone have any edits or issues? Okay, so I'm gonna request that someone make a motion to approve the August minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Okay, that carries. Did everyone get a chance to review the September minutes? Anyone have any edits that they feel should be made? Okay, so, well, there's no motion. You want to make a motion to adopt them?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, all in favor of that? Aye. Anyone opposed?
I'm just abstaining because I wasn't here.
Okay,
Yeah, but
sure.
you can still,
With no one opposed, we have one abstention, and
Okay,
he's on. All right, unanimous. Thank you, Jasmine, for preparing the minutes. Very nice job.
I'm just saying, yeah. you agree with something.
Okay, so other business, we do have some other business. The other business is Friendly Acres. So we've gotten, well, we're supposed to have received a letter, which we have not received yet, but basically this, if everyone remembers, there's some sort of structure on some kind of a trailer. And there was a citation that came from the code enforcement office for an unpermitted structure. Then they went and applied for a permit for the structure, and then the permit got denied, and then they were told, oh, you need a variance for a campground. Then we sent a letter to code enforcement saying, well, what exactly variance, and like what's going on? What do you think we should be doing here? And they said, well, it doesn't meet the code for a campground. That's all they said. So I got on, we done some additional outreach to the code enforcement office to try to understand, because it feels like it's not lining up. Also, the applicant asked if they could instead do an appeal of the code enforcement determination from the permit application, which they can't do because that's time limited and they're well outside of the time limit window. So we're in a little bit of a procedural snafu. We have a variance application. We've asked them for some information. We have not received that information from them. So we asked them for things like documentation on the trailer, some pictures of the site, just like more information kind of broadly. We haven't gotten anything.
How long would you ask?
It's 2 months.
You asked them for that information 2 months ago?
Yeah.
They were on the August.
Yeah. So we've had some correspondence with them, but they haven't like given us a packet with the things that we asked for.
And Friendly Acres has not given the paperwork that they were supposed to give me in time. They only emailed it.
Did they send anything in the last week? Oh, okay, yeah. So we don't really have anything new from them. Well, we found out from code enforcement, and we hopefully will have this in a letter soon. Is that there was some sort of complaint from a neighbor, the fire safety inspector went out to check out what's going on. He saw some kind of trailer, that part kind of agrees, something on wheels in construction. But he saw some things that made him think that someone was at least some of the time, camping or living or something. So that's why he issued the citation. But we're in a little bit of a tricky situation because the facts as presented from the code enforcement office in this letter that we're still waiting on don't totally match up with what the applicant is saying. Also, the applicant in theory is applying for a variance for a campground, which they themselves kind of say, well, we don't want to have a campground. We just want to like keep doing the thing that we're doing, which according to them is just building a homemade RV. So there's a couple things that we can do. One thing we can do is we can just say, look, they're asking for a variance from campground code. We think we have enough information to decide whether or not to grant that variance, right? We could just say like, there's a lot of stuff with the campground code. We don't think this would be I don't know what we would decide, but we might decide that we just don't think this is a good place for a campground. If you're asking for a campground variance, like, we've asked you for stuff we haven't gotten it. We're moving this forward. We can schedule for a public hearing. Start moving it forward. We can vote to do that right now. We could also decide to send a letter, like from us to the applicant, kind of like saying, hey, what do you want to do here? Like, we can't appeal it. You're kind of saying you don't want a campground. You could withdraw your application, which would get it off of our docket. What that would do for them is it would reset the citation, which is currently stayed
Well, it wouldn't necessarily reset the citation. It
Well, the
would-
citation's active.
Right.
But it's stayed because they're,
Well, the application is separate from the citation in this instance, isn't it? They
no.
still Issued the citation.
Well, they were issued a citation and with, it's like a ticket, right? So, but if you're actively working through permitting to resolve the ticket, there's no like court action. It's paused in terms of,
In other words, if they decide to withdraw, then they've taken it upon themselves to accept the citation.
yeah, and they have to deal with it in court. They
Right.
can dispute it in court, or
It
not.
wouldn't reset the timeline for them to reapply.
No,
It automatically, their withdrawal would say, listen, now you.
yeah,
have
then
to
it
deal
just
with
goes to the,
courts. Yeah.
and they could say the same thing they said to us, which is like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. We don't think we're in any kind of violation. But like, we can't really make that determination. I mean, we can make that determination when deciding whether or not to grant a campground variance. But we can't appeal, like they can't appeal the code enforcement determination anymore, because it's just timed out.
I am wondering about that.
Well, that one's just straightforward. There's 30 days.
No, there's almost always an exception. Because I believe that in this situation, well, I would like to explore that. Say that. I would like to explore whether or not that's true. You've had a discussion
With our
counsel?
attorney, yeah.
I'd like to talk.
Sure.
It's the only way we can have her come to the next meeting.
We could, yeah. I mean, she asked if I wanted to come to this meeting and I was like, I think we're okay. I mean, what she advised is that we send them a letter, that we like decide now, that we should just send them a letter being like, hey, look, what do you want to do here? You can withdraw, which would mean this. You can, we're discussing it now. We can just say like, we're gonna schedule, or we can just schedule for a public hearing, move it forward. And whatever we decide, we decide.
Except
They did not drop off the paper copies that they were instructed to.
okay.
So that, anywhere,
Yes.
Yeah, I just,
Send
when I opened it up.
This is moving the file, yes.
Okay.
I told them they needed to deliver me paper copies by November 5th and for nothing.
By November 5th,
Oh, October 5th.
say that they still have time.
Nope, by October 5th and her.
But they're just building, one trailer, then they want to build. Build that one, sell it, then build another one, sell it like that, are they?
The code enforcement that these pictures do not accurately reflect what the interior currently looks like.
Yes, so there's a factual dispute, which, we can adjudicate, we can decide who we think is being straightforward or who's giving us information that we find compelling and who we don't. We can do that. The thing for me is that I don't understand, and they did send this registration.
Yeah, the title.
So but the factual question to me doesn't actually speak to whether or not, like, it doesn't address the variance that they're asking for. Like, they applied for a variance for a campground permit,
That's what it's just calling
right? And this addresses
living.
some of the, right, but it's like, this addresses like what the actual structure is, whether it's a trailer that has a title and a registration, which it does.
They actually apply for the campground? No, because I'm looking at the variant application. It says ability to store a recreational vehicle year long.
Right, but there is no such
That's
variance.
the one that falls
Yeah, code enforcement.
west. I know, this is a contention with a lot of people.
Well, if you needed a variant, everybody in this town that owns a camper would have to have a variant.
But the requirement is that they have a primary resident where the campers being stored.
And this property's broken up into all the
That's the
different-
problem.
It's a weird situation.
Well, I mean, but either way, what the code enforcement referral says is the applicant proposes permanently parking a recreational vehicle to use as living space. The applicant says that's not what they're doing. And then we have proposal does not comply with campground code, which is the only code that would allow you to do the thing that code enforcement is saying that they want to do, but that the applicant is saying they don't want to do. Right, so like, the applicant is like following the steps that code enforcement is putting in front of them. And maybe, you know, because they're not lawyers, they're not professionals who deal with this stuff all the time. They're like, okay, so you want us to apply for a variance, we'll apply for a variance. But then we say, well, do you want a campground variance? They're like, no, we just want to park a thing that no one lives in. So there is, it's like, it's still just kind of thorny.
That's why I have a question about the statute of limitations.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I don't want to get
Yeah.
into a sidebar, you know, here with our lawyer, but there is some principle in the law that if you are affirmatively misled in a way that materially impacts your rights, then the person asserting that you're time barred may
Right.
not be able to actually get that through. And it makes sense if you think about it, right? If somebody reasonably relies on a representation that in this case, this was the particular thing that they needed to do in order to achieve their objective, and they simply went ahead and followed instructions, and later it turns out there was a reasonable difference of
Right.
opinion as to whether or not that was wrong.
Even if-
Anyway, so that you might be able to roll it.
Right.
Again, that was just my thought. I could be totally wrong.
Question
Totally.
that would be,
She does this for a living. You know?
if the person presenting the problem has a different understanding of what the problem is versus the applicant that's questioning for a solution. In other words, we have code enforcement that believes somebody's actually living in that camper. And now the applicant says, well, I'm not living in that camper. Does it make a whole new circumstance that needs to be addressed? Or does it become, now we need a camping permit, where if we were just storing the camper, we don't need the campground permit. But if somebody's going to reside in it, which is the way that it was addressed in code enforcement, now they need a camping permit. That's the crux here. One person's saying this, like Sam's saying, one person's saying this, the thorns are there. Nobody knows who's telling the
Right,
truth.
so if there was like an appeal, right, if
Yeah.
initially, if they had said, well, you're telling me I need a campground permit, and I'm saying I don't, because no one's camping, then it would be up to us to decide who's right, and that would be in part a question about the facts.
We don't know who's saying they live there, and is the person living there, or are they not living?
Yeah, that's what code enforcement is saying, that they believe, and also, to be fair, we have not seen any documentation from
Proving
code
otherwise.
enforcement
Right.
that backs up what they're saying. We haven't even gotten a letter from them that explains what this is about from their perspective.
And
You know, we've heard some things verbally and like through informal channels, but like we have not received a letter.
it's safe that they haven't provided us with any proof to demonstrate that somebody's actually been residing in the camper.
So that's why there's like, but even if there's no one living there, or even if there is someone living there, if what they're asking for is a variance from campground, it's like, we don't really, like, there's a lot of stuff required to have a campground.
Yeah.
And one of the things is lot size, but like another thing is like road access. There's like no roads here, right? Like, even if we believe the code enforcement narrative and the applicant's kind of moving forward, you know, and they're saying we want a campground variance, but they're also kind of not saying that. They're saying, no, we don't want a campground variance. We want to be able to do this thing that we don't think is a problem. Which is also why the option for them to just withdraw, go back, you have a citation, go to court and tell the court, we don't agree.
But they would have to withdraw.
They would have to
Based
withdraw.
on the application.
Or get
they're
denied.
looking for- In which case, we would have to take the application at face value. Yes or no, do we give them a campground?
Right.
Is that what
Well, it's big. All of it's a little bit, I mean, I don't know what the right word to use is. I mean, I don't want to say, I want to say imprecise. like their ZBA application, you know, they check it off as a use variance. It's not a use variance, it's an area variance. There's some imprecision in the way that these forms get filled out by just ordinary people. And then when they say reason, they said code enforcement issued a violation for storing a record. Like the internal logic is not coherent really any way you slice it.
Even still, they're not a commercial property, so they can't build you can't build something that you're gonna sell.
Well, maybe they're not gonna sell it.
I
Maybe
didn't
they're
get the
first use.
impression.
The guys building it for
No.
themselves.
Can we
Yeah,
refuse the application at this point? Can we turn around and say, based on what's being applied for?
I don't think we can reject.
Or not reject it, we can vote it down based on its request and what's requested.
Yes, we can, but the next step on that would be scheduling it for a public hearing. You know, we can, so I think there's a few things sound like on the table. Like one is we can kind of just wait some more. Like right now, there's no time clock ticking for us. I'm just saying, like, one thing we can do is just wait, like remind the applicant, hey, we still need some more information from you. We'll put you on the next agenda. Ask the code enforcement again, like, hey, we're supposed to be waiting on a letter from you. Then we have them at the next agenda, talk about it some more. We can have the conversation like this with the applicant, you know, present, and maybe they make a decision in the meeting to take an action. Another option is we can, and these things aren't all mutually exclusive, we could say, let's schedule this for a public hearing at our next meeting. Notice it. We can also say, let's send the applicant a letter saying, here's where we're at, you know, we want to move this forward on the basis of the campground, but also you represented us that you don't really want a campground, so you could withdraw, which is also fine. But like we can't withdraw on their behalf. All we can do is move it forward based on what they asked for.
We can
And
wait
the
one more month for the
information, yeah.
response. We can modify both examples there by waiting one more month for their response. And at the next meeting, inform them in a letter that at the next meeting, we are going to schedule the public hearing.
Well, we can do, but yeah, we can do both of those. We can schedule a public hearing and some.
I think that would be a wise idea. That way, at least if they
keep
don't move
the ball
farther,
moving.
we can move, we
Yep.
can continue to move on.
Right, we can have a public hearing, close the public hearing and make a decision. Whatever that, you know, maybe it's yes, maybe it's no, but then it's off our docket and
I
then
mean, it's completed before the end of the year.
And we'll have enough information right now that we can comfortably schedule a public hearing.
we have a good amount of information, you know, I think we have enough information that we can, I mean, I asked our attorney that, I was like, can we schedule a public hearing with this amount of information? She's like, yeah, if you think you have enough information to assess whether a variance in order, you know, to do a campground, if you think you have enough information to answer that question, then yes. And that is technically the question before us, because that's what the code enforcement referral says. It needs a variance from campground law. And then when we asked them, well, what exactly variance from campground law do you want? They said campground law, which I personally found disappointing.
I think based on the application, request that's on the application, we've got enough in front of us to make a decision based on the campground request that we can schedule a public hearing at this point.
How's everyone else feel? Ken?
I'm still uncomfortable with foreclosing their ability. Because I'm not sure how it works, but I thought I've seen where somebody gets a document from code enforcement and it more or less advises them to ask for a variance.
Sure.
And if that's the case, then their failure as unadvised citizens, and I think we generally conduct ourselves as making us a board that you shouldn't have to hire a lawyer to come to the zoning board of appeals. And I personally think we could, you know, but I'd like to talk with the lawyer about my theory about whether or not there is a way around that. Because if it was an appeal, then I think a public hearing would be meaningful. Whereas if we're talking about a campground variance, we're talking about a square, a round hole in the square. I mean, they're just not meeting, right?
Right, yeah.
There's no meaning of what they're asking for and what the code is.
Couldn't we discover a little bit of that? We give them that extension, we allow them that extension between now and the public hearing. You know,
If
we're still slowing down that process, summons and everything else by going to the public hearing, and then we can address some of those questions that we might have at that public hearing.
I mean, maybe what you're saying too is like, maybe it's not mutually exclusive, like,
Okay,
you can, if we do the public hearing thing, maybe we wait to send them any kind of letter, but maybe you can have a conversation, because I hear what you're saying, like, I agree, you know, I didn't think of asking those questions when I was on the phone, and it makes sense to me, like, I hear what you're saying, I was like, I know there's been other times before the board where the board has had to like, think about, well, where exactly does the time clock start? And what you're bringing up is like, well, you need to have a reasonable amount of information in order for that to be meaningful. You know, they can't appeal the citation to us. The citation, that's a court question, but they can't appeal a code enforcement determination. Code enforcement, they like, what they applied for to code enforcement was what they wrote on proposed use described on the code enforcement permit, but it's on a zoning permit. It said ability to store recreational vehicle year round, with that parentheses without 30-day limit. And I think like what we're kind of all homing in on is like, well, first of all, what 30-day limit? None of us have found that in our code anywhere. So like, what's that 30-day limit?
Well, that's 3 days living. If I'm not mistaken, is they can live in it for 30
You
days.
can live in it for 30 days, but if you're not
We're
living
gonna
in
pull
it,
it out.
But you have to remove it from the
Right.
property.
but if you're not living in it, then there's nowhere that I have found or anyone that I know has found where there's a limit if it's just parked.
Right.
So they're asking for a limit to store a recreational vehicle, not live in it. And then code enforcement says you can't do that because you need a campground permit. So they can appeal that and we could make a decision. Like, I think that is a cleaner way through this, but it's my understanding based on what I know that like, well, it's too late for them to do that appeal. So we just kind of need to like punt in some kind of way. They either need to withdraw or we need to finish going through the motions of the variance. We can close the door. The door's wide open.
how about this?
Yeah.
Let's proceed along the ways that you described, where we will call for the public hearing. In the meantime, I'll explore with our attorney what the contours are of the statute of limitations that you defined on. And if the answer is, as you described to me, that there's no way that the applicant can get around it and there's no way for you to consider it.
Which I didn't ask a lot of follow-up questions. I was like, right, there's a time limit. That was it.
Rather than tying up all of the time, find out if it has any statute on this or any bearing on this too, whether that time limit actually applies.
It doesn't, there's a time limit on procedural appeals.
Procedures, yes, but as far as the violation and how long they have until they receive a decision before the violation has to go forward, where it was 30 days, I think you mentioned, Sam, once the violation is addressed, then it can go to the courts.
Oh, I don't know
So
about that.
I don't want to, in other words, I don't want to lose any weight that could potentially come from the summons by us delaying it too long. Now the statute of limitations runs out on that. Some time to go to court. Like
My understanding, there isn't one like that. It's like, as long as they're, you know, actively pursuing resolution,
As long as they-
which they are, I think they are doing that.
If they haven't sent you the information that you need, that shows me right there that they're not
That's
just staying active.
Yeah, but,
Just, oh, well.
but that's
well,
not for
like-
us to decide, like, if the, that's not for us really to decide, like, they have an active application, which,
we have a timeline though that we have to act.
well, no, we only have a, that's only once we
Schedule.
schedule a close of public
Close
hearing.
Yeah, and we have 62 days to act.
So currently, there's no time restrictions on us or on like when they have to go to court or something. You know, we're working on it, you know, it's not super fast, but like we are working on it. They're responsive to our emails, like, maybe they're not as good as we might want them to be, but
Can I-
neither is code enforcement.
Let me make a further suggestion, amend it. So let's not call for the public hearing in November. No, let's try and explore whether or not there's anything further information, notwithstanding that you did it. But, or go ahead, set the public hearing, and it probably will still be going on in December.
I suspect so. I mean, what about me sending a letter on behalf of the board to the applicant? And if we are comfortable authorizing me to do that, you know, what do we want it to say? Like, I think I'd propose something like, hey, we went ahead and scheduled this for a public hearing. We're still kind of confused here about how to move through this. The board doesn't like it just kind of sitting here
How long can you leave the public hearing open?
We can only-
indefinitely
Yeah, you can go.
forever.
But we've got to be careful that we don't set a precedence where an applicant puts in an application for this and then it gets delayed for an eternity. And they expect to have this much time and they put their application in. We have to be cautious of that.
That's good point.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to move it forward. But I think what a letter should say is like, hey, we scheduled this for public hearing for this question of campground. We feel like we've got, you know, enough information to think about this area variance for a campground. At the same time, we're still confused. It seems like there's some factual disputes. And, you know, you might want to just withdraw this.
I don't know to be confused. We just want more information. We request more information if they have any to provide.
Right, but also we've requested that from code enforcement who initiated this whole thing. And they've also basically given us nothing. Like the applicant has given us,
So. it really-
well, no, I mean, in
They
the,
do matter.
in the record, we have
So,
two very sparse documents from the code enforcement office, which to this board, it seems, I think this is fair to say, do not make logical sense.
something really-
And we have a bunch of stuff from the applicant, which is a little bit also disorganized and askance. That like, you know, we're kind of at this impasse where like the logic of it doesn't make sense. And code enforcement's not giving us what we've asked for. And neither is the applicant is giving more of what we've asked for, but not everything. And I don't like, I mean, I personally just don't like it sitting here in limbo. Everyone else is either withdrawn, people have withdrawn stuff. Like the guy last month
Yeah.
withdrew. You know, we get that, they send us an email, we put that in their file, then we're done with it. You know, this one, it's like they said, well, we want to appeal. And then our attorney was like, well, they can't appeal because they're too late, but they haven't withdrawn it. So like, part of me wants to just send them a letter, like laying that out. Like, here's where we're at. Here's why we set it for a public hearing. Here's some other paths that might be available. You know, we're not going to recommend a path, but like one option is you withdraw this, and then you, if you don't agree with code enforcement, you know, you talk
Appeal
to the
that
judge about
through
that
the judge.
Yeah.
Courts.
and let a judge decide it.
Have they actually communicated that they wanted to appeal? I remember that they sent in something that said, we want to appeal. And our attorney is advising us to say, no, it's too late.
Mhm.
And have we communicated that to them? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I think we did that right when they were here.
No, I don't know if we have it in
Not in
writing.
August, no.
I don't know if we've responded in writing to that.
No, because when we were here in August, I was talking,
Well, this could be included in there. The appeal, the time limit for appeal has been exhausted. We had to go ahead and schedule a public hearing.
Yeah,
That's,
I haven't heard from them very often to.
I think there's
even
been a severe lack of
relay that
communication
information
on
out
both.
there. Extra email.
right, but all I'm saying is that in order, just to follow right procedure, if somebody comes to a board and says, I want to appeal, and the board wants to say, no, your time is too late, you need to it would be best practice to document that in a letter that was just addressed to that. And I wouldn't even, in that particular, well, talk about withdrawing, but we could proceed with it as a variance application. If that's the, if that's the determination.
And still.
Because then they could go to court and challenge our decision
Right.
as to denying their right to appeal.
Right.
And that's what I'm kind of thinking about, is how would we fare if we were in court defending our decision to deny them the right to appeal based on the time under the facts of this case.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm not,
Their due diligence is on them to discover what the time is. In that instance,
Sort
in
of.
other words, if they are late in requesting this, it's just like anything else, there's an expiration date that's implied when this happens. In other words, if they're given 30 days and they wait 35 days, well, we want to appeal. Well, you should have done that 5 days ago, and you didn't.
They had both at the
or,
time, too.
absolutely, you're absolutely agree. The only slight difference I'd say is that there is sometimes when, certain governmental bodies can construe something as something else. This is what they meant to do, particularly when somebody is pro se and they're not represented by an attorney. Because the objective of the law generally is actually to
Get the
try
just
and
outcome.
get the just out. And as the facts are presented to us, it seemed to me that really what they had wanted to do all along was to appeal.
But you're concerned that the balance won't be met between right and what they did and what we do.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, and they did, I mean, I think your specific questions, they did ask to change it to an appeal. They asked for that on October 4th. So they were like trying to get in right ahead of our meeting step.
October 4th.
October 4th, yeah.
What was their initial violation?
Oh, well, the code enforcement denial of their permit, their CEO determination was May 31st, 2023. So
Right,
We didn't-
right. So but the question is, if you accept,
that's when they,
right, but if you accept the premise is, if they timely file, if the time for variance and appeal is the same.
Right.
And they did they checked variance spots
I
and
think
stuff.
there's no time limit on a variance.
Sorry.
If you have a CEO determination saying you can't get this permit unless you get a variance, I think that's just live.
Oh,
I think. I guess I've never had that question come up.
You need the variance, then you're in violation until you have the variance. It's pre-existing, right? So there is a time limit. It's now. You're wrong right now. You're still going to be wrong a year from now and 2 years from now. So it doesn't say, well, I haven't applied yet, so it doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Right. But that would be, again, that's like the code enforcement saying like, no, we're gonna bring this to court next, we haven't
and
done
that's-
anything, which
That's what
hasn't
I'm
happened.
saying. In that case, the violation would be issued for that particular incident.
So what do we want to do right now? I mean, I think we're all like tangled up in knots because this thing doesn't make
It
any
doesn't,
dang sense. We've got, again, just to go through it, we got a violation, a citation issued for a unpermitted structure, which was followed up by a permit application to park a vacant RV. This board has not seen anything in the town of Rochester zoning code that requires any such permit, but also that permit doesn't speak to the citation like directly, except that the people went in, they said, we got the citation, how do we fix it? The code enforcement apparently told them, apply for a permit to park at camp, right? Then that permit gets denied. And we get a referral to do that, they need to variance from campground, which again, to this board, doesn't make any sense. And now we have a variance application for campground. So like,
Is it too late to back the truck up and
move
look
the
at
dang thing.
where our steps were? Because it sounds to me like an error was made in communication between zone and code enforcement and applicant. Yeah, it sounds to me like, because there is no law exists, the only one that broadly covers everything is applying for a campground permit.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether or not the code enforcement officer has the ability to reconsider a decision.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
Or they
maybe,
can
but
remove
I
the
don't know.
violation. And reissue under a different guideline.
But again, we can't be the catalyst for that. I don't think.
We need to
No.
decide whether we're sending a letter or setting for public hearing,
Or both.
Or doing nothing. We can also do nothing.
Or do nothing, right?
or just wait it out.
We can put them on the agenda for the next meeting without setting.
That's correct. Given that, I think that would exhaust what Ken's addressing and that gaining as much balance as we can to maybe glean some more information between code enforcement and what they have to provide. And encourage them to be at the next meeting to address these issues. And we
Who,
don't
code
want
enforcement or the applicant?
both.
Yeah,
Both.
okay, well, let's do that. That's another thing we can do. We can request, and it's basically a requirement, if we request it, that a representative of the code enforcement office is here, like the code enforcement officer or the person who should.
I would like to have them address some
Um,
questions.
So we can do that. We can say, all right, we're not gonna set this for public hearing. We want our attorney here. We want the applicant here, and we want code enforcement here. And we want to just untangle this. I mean, that's the power. We do have that power as a board. We can just say, all you people need to be in the same room, but Ken won't be. But you can talk to,
You guys are all,
but
you're all
you,
pretty sharp. You all could have been lawyers.
but you one-on-one can also, you can have a conversation with our attorney about this. Also, just so that your questions are
Okay.
addressed, and maybe that'll inform how she thinks about it too. I don't know.
Not that if they decide not to show up, the applicant decides not to show up, still does not have any bearing on whether or not to go forward with it. If they choose not to, well, then we don't get the answers we need from them.
Okay, so it sounds like where we're at is, we don't really want to schedule for a public hearing because that feels maybe a little like
Premature.
or just like maybe it's not the right vibes, yeah, to be a millennial, talk about vibes. What we want to do is get everyone in a room so that we can hash this out so that we understand what our options are. Understand, like, again, I don't want to put this all on the applicant not being super responsive. Like, I'm pretty disappointed with the type of response we've been getting from the code enforcement in terms of explaining what's going on. So we can ask, it's my understanding we can require them to be present. And we can also do that with the applicant, say, you need to be here, code enforcement, you need to be here. And we've asked our attorney to be here for that meeting. And we just put that on the agenda. So I can send those letters. I don't think it's a letter to the applicant so much. I mean, we can remind them, hey, we still have a few things to ask you for. We're going to put you on your agenda next week. We're going to put you on the agenda whether we get the things or not.
I wouldn't say that. I would just say, we'll put you on the agenda next month.
And we still request these things.
We need these before the meeting.
Mhm. And we prefer you to be here.
And I would set the guideline for receiving information at least 2 weeks prior to.
Oh, no, they already know. I'll let everyone know what the requirement is.
Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put them on the agenda for the next meeting.
Do you want to make a motion for that?
We don't need to make a motion for that. I have the sole authority to set the agenda. Which sounds weird, but sounds authoritative. Well, I want to make sure we're all on the same page, because I can't set a public hearing by myself.
Right.
Right, and I can't send a letter. I mean, I can send a letter as the chair, but I don't want to send a letter if the whole board's not behind what I'm saying. But it sounds like we all agree, we just want to get everyone in a room. See if there's a way to untangle this, including our attorney who can help us understand,
Legal parts of it.
yeah, in real time, what our
Untangle is
legal
not.
restrictions are. Okay,
At the very least, it'll help us go forward with other stuff.
okay. Cool. Anyone else have anything? So we're settled on that. We're just gonna put it on the agenda. We're gonna ask code enforcement to be here. We're gonna make sure our attorney's here. And we're gonna ask the applicant to be here. And if there's anything we still have not received from them, we're gonna ask them for that on letter 2. So that's all the letter's gonna say. It's just, you're on the agenda for next month. You should be here. These are the things we still need.
Can we FaceTime you?
He can watch.
Be on a
He
flight
can
from
watch,
Japan,
but can't
literally.
participate.
I'm not gonna land until 9:35.
Great connection.
So.
Okay.
So,
Anyone have any business, anything other than what we were just talking about? Okay, motion to adjourn.
second.
All right, that's it. We're done. So easy.
Yeah, so easy.